Welcome back to Physioplata. We got a pretty interesting topic, man. We get to talk about this list that came out of the most dangerous submissions in jiu-jitsu.
It's a good list.
It's going to be a good list, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Henderson, alongside my co-host, Dr. Patrick Damreth. And we got a lot in store for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent list that's come out. Brandon Mccaghren, 10th Planet coach, has put out a list of the most dangerous submissions. So we're going to talk about that. And what else are we going to talk about today?
You wanted to talk about the ingredients that it takes, or what you should expect when you're recovering from an injury to get back on the mat, specifically. Boom, 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 step by step.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start with this list. All right. So we looked at it the other day, right?
Yeah.
We looked at this. So let's take a look here.
Okay.
So Brandon Mccaghren is a coach with 10th Planet. I'm also a 10th Planet student. And so he's got a really pretty
fanatic
big cult. So Brandon put this list out. I was really interested to see this list because he did it in conjunction with an orthopedic surgeon. And so,
which is cool because he's doing jiu-jitsu too, as far as I understand from the videos, I think.
Yeah, I believe he's a student. I'm not sure what rank he is.
Man, I don't know. He seemed like he knew his stuff really well.
Okay, well, that's cool. Well, if you know the guy, gosh, that's terrible. I forget the guy's name. Was it Crawford? I forget the doc's name.
Oh, I have no idea.
It's okay. Forgive us for forgetting your name, but we'll get it right. But the list is interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's cool that they did that list, actually, because, we've been talking about it here and there as well a little bit about what we thought. We took it a little different way, right? We talked about, well, what do we think is more dangerous, like leg attacks or arm attacks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought about it a little bit, but that list is cool. I like it.
Yeah, this breaks it down. So I got to go back and remember some of the things we talked about with some of the areas that are injured the most. So we looked at obviously the knee and the shoulder. Are really,
are you talking about that article that we were talking about once?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were talking about knee injuries being the most common.
Yeah, knees are the most common. That kind of correlates pretty well. So let's take a couple of these. So like at number 10. This is something that the gi guys and the no gi guys we utilize quite a bit, is a straight ankle lock. And
early too, right, in the training. So I feel like that's one leg attack that as a white belt in the gi I was exposed to and learned and was taught right away.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing on the straight ankle too, because I remember there was a time, maybe when I first started training about, I think 6 years ago or so, that we were taught really not to respect the straight ankle too much. So it's more of a painful lock. So it's like, I even heard a coach one time at a competition say, "Hey man, don't tap to that." So the guy got a pretty good bite on a straight ankle and was cranking on it pretty hard. The coach was like, "Hey man, don't tap to that."
Yeah, so it's more of they used to think it was more of a pain compliance thing, like some other things, right? But I think that view has changed.
Well, it's funny. I mean, my view on it has certainly changed because some of the guys that I trade with have really decent straight ankle locks, and they will break your shit.
Yeah.
So
like literally, not just in the break your shit sense. Like they actually will break your tibia.
Yeah, you get a fracture. Yeah. So it's like. I remember I was trading with this one kid. He's a white belt, but he really, really liked leg locks, and so he'd get me an ashi, and he'd put on the straight ankle, and you do the thing where you just kind of look at him, and you're just kind of waiting for him to put on enough pressure, and then you start to move. And I wasn't respecting it at all. And then after about a month or so, he got in there. He popped the shit out of my ankle, man. He really, really popped it good. So, and I was sore for a couple of weeks after that. So I really started respecting the straight ankle a lot more. And then lately, I've been seeing some more instructionals and things like that on the straight ankle, and it's been getting a lot more attention. And we've been spending a lot of time on the straight ankle in our leg lock class, our Saturday morning leg lock classes, and man, those suckers really, really hurt. So I was a little surprised, but then at the same time, I thought,
Well, I think it's also one that's easily applied. There's a quick transition into it, whereas some other things you might have to set them up a little bit more, right? But I think on another note, that when they first introduced it, or whether they first taught it, I'm not exactly sure what the origin was, right, of that submission. But when I first remember learning about it, it was always put on in the same way where you're like in that 50-50 almost, or you're, like you said, you're going from the ashi to the straight ankle lock, right? And then you're kind of just applying the submission in a linear form. But now the submission, I feel like, is changed up a little bit, where there's a little more rotational force on it. And on top of that, there's now levels to it, right? So when I learned it first, like you're applying the pressure and then you're leaning back, extending your hips into it. If they don't tap, now there's more things you can do. Now you can turn your body down into the floor, extend even more, look away, right? That kind of stuff. And then there's even other ways to apply the straight ankle lock. If you're, for example, if I have to think about this one, you might know this better than me, but there's a standing version of it where you're actually, or like a half kneeling version where you're then rotating your body away, and all those different angles now, they have now a little bit more of a rotational component. Now you're getting the outside ligaments a little bit more involved. You're applying more pressure also on the fibula, not just on the tibia, which that bone is much less dense than the tibia, right? And then on another note, I don't know how many videos or memes you've seen on Instagram, but I've seen a few where there's like guys, there's this trend where they have these baseball bats.
I've seen
like
this.
They have like three baseball bats,
and,
and not just guys. Yeah. I've seen women do that too.
There's a couple
and they're putting that in that same lock as a straight ankle, and then you're just leaning back, extending the hips, and freaking breaking all of those. And then obviously at the thin end, at the handle, not at the end of the baseball bat, but still, man, 3 of them.
No, man.
You take the tibia, obviously it's a much thicker and a little bit more pliable and whatever, but that's just not cool. I don't want my leg in there.
No, man, screw that noise. I've gotten enough good straight ankles put on me now where I'm like, I very much respect it. And so, it's funny that you brought in the rotational component, because the next one was the toe hold.
And that's number 9.
That's number 9. So,
dude, the toe hold is...
I love the toe hold, man. I love me some toe holds.
I will definitely agree with that position where the toe hold is in front of the straight ankle lock, but I will say the toe hold is dangerous. I've used it. It's been applied to me as well. And I always, like, from basketball, from like the ankle sprains, I've always like been very wary of my ankles and the tension that's being placed on them. So I'm a little bit more cautious with that. But I don't like that position at all, and it's just so weak for your ankle to be in that position, and it doesn't take a lot of force to do much damage, and obviously most people will in a roll put a little bit more pressure into it, not on purpose, but just to hold it, right, just to catch it almost, and that catch alone is just already a bad position to be in. Yeah, for real, especially if they've got the knee bent and you've got your toe like right into your butt. Dude, it's just... knee bent, knee straight, doesn't matter. Stop it.
Oh, yeah. You just tap.
It's nasty.
And the next one, so we go straight ankle, toe hold. The next one's wrist lock. Okay, man, why everybody hating on the wrist lock? I love the wrist lock. But yeah, I could see definitely how it could be problematic. Yeah,
and I think it's a little bit more complicated, because if you're thinking about on a physical therapy mindset or anatomy, looking at the anatomy of the wrist, the carpal bones, the fact that they're just like held together like marbles with connective tissue and stuff like that, and it doesn't take a whole lot of force to disrupt that connective tissue, and the lasting impact of that, I think, is why it's on number 7 instead of having the toe hold on number or below, right, or having the wrist lock higher on that list. And plus, also the recovery on that wrist is a little bit more tricky, and you have to be you kind of have to know what you're doing, because you can have lasting impacts on a lot of things, and people perceive that to be more limiting in most cases, right? Because we use our hands so freaking much that if you have something going on with your foot, you can still limp around a bit. You can still get around, but on a messed up wrist, that's impactful.
Yeah, it really is. It can be tough, and some of the most challenging cases I've ever attempted to rehab, they have in the field of rehabilitation, they have a certified hand therapist, so they have people devoted just to the distal part of the upper extremity. It's such a complicated and involved part of the human body, and So when you do something that damages that, it can be tricky, especially some of the distal radial ulnar joint stuff that we see.
That
you get an
TFCC is hard.
It really is. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's the wrist can be very problematic, very persistent, and
I'll say straight up, I'm so grateful that I went through my manual fellowship, because it had like a couple of sessions, which was a few months just spent on the wrist itself. And I think that's so needed. Like, if you're straight out of PT school, you do not have enough tools to handle the wrist and recover, or someone who has a significant wrist injury. If there's a PT watching, thanks for watching, but please do yourself a favor and get a CEU credit, continuing education on the wrist, because it'll go a long way, and it'll be necessary.
It makes a big difference. I think, understanding the wrist and the hand, to me, it's one of the more fascinating. It's like the foot and ankle. I mean, they're just both very, very fascinating parts of the human body. And it's pretty specialized. So yeah, when you jerk around with a wrist lock, usually, when I use wrist locks, it's almost a joke. We just kind of kid around. I'm not slapping them on really, really hard, but I love catching a good wrist lock. And
what sucks?
What's that? What sucks?
If you catch a Kimura,
and
you apply a little Kimura force on the shoulder, and then you do a little little extra sauce on that wrist lock.
Put a little
that's
sauce
nice.
There. Yeah, that's nice. That's real nice. I really enjoy just it's like, the Kimura's there, but here's also a wrist lock. Yeah,
it just makes it a little sweeter.
It just does. It's just a little sauce. We're gonna maybe skip through a few of these. So
which one? Don't you skip on my Kimura.
No. We're going to hit the Kimura. But we got an arm bar.
Yeah, straightforward, right? What spot is that? Number 6?
Arm seat, 10, 9. Hang on. Yeah, it's 6. We got knee bar is 5.
Knee bar.
Bro, the knee bars can be intense.
And then they talked about that video too, and in that video about the knee bar, in terms of the dangers of it going way too far. And dislocating the knee. You have vascular structures in the back of the knee, like arteries and stuff like that you do not want to have damage to. That's very life-threatening. And they talk about that in that video, so I think that's a good cover on it. I will say, though, in an actual knee bar, I don't see that dislocation happen very often. Like, I think it's rare, right?
I've seen one, at least one. The one that I always remember when I think of a dislocated knee, it was back in the early 90s. Napoleon McCallum was running back for the Raiders. I think it was the Los Angeles Raiders at the time. And he got caught in a pile up and just got folded over his knee. It was probably, I'll never forget watching it. And he obviously tore a lot of the neurovascular structures in the back of the knee, and saved his leg. I'm pretty sure it ended his career. I don't think he played again. I'm not sure. I have to go look it up. But yeah, I always think, when I think of a dislocated knee, a hyperextended knee, every time I think of a knee bar, I think, well, that's as bad as it could get. It probably won't get that bad. I will tap like a bitch before you catch a knee bar like that. If you've got a really tight knee bar, I'm tapping. But I've seen some, like in the I think in the UFC there was a pretty good knee bar. Either last year or the year before, it was a women's fight. Really, really nasty little knee bar. So, it's a tough injury, and you're looking at usually at multi-ligament instability after a really bad knee bar injury.
I think the dangers in the knee bar, as well as the toe, lie in the fact that people aren't aware of what's happening.
Yeah, that definitely could be. That may be the same case with a straight ankle too, because you start straight ankles when you're a white belt. I don't know. Who knows? We got the Americana.
And that's number 5, right?
That's
number 4.
The Americana is number 5.
Number 5.
Yeah.
I would have put the Americana way up high on the list.
Me too.
Me
too.
But I guess they were talking about the capsular structures that get, or the labrum that gets injured, and they were going at it from an angle of dislocations and having instability. And I think, sure, but I would have just put it high on the list.
I would have put it higher on the list too, but a really good Americana, like really, really tight. You get the elbow down by the body. Man, it's a very, very tight submission. You don't usually see people at the higher levels getting Americana, but it's still, I'll
put it at least above the knee bar.
Yeah, I would too. I was surprised to see it maybe below the knee bar, but
whatever.
Probably had a reason.
List.
Yeah, whatever. It's an interesting list. Okay, so let's go Kimura. Kimura's number 4 on this list.
I think the Kimura is definitely in a good place on that list, legitimate spot, because not only do you get what you get from the Americana with the soft tissue damage, the labrum, muscles, etc., you are at a higher risk of fractures of the upper proximal humerus and shoulder. So I think it's definitely earned its spot right there, and I like where it's at on that list.
I agree. I think Kimura is definitely in that neighborhood of the heel hooks and the twister, which we'll get to in just a little bit. The Kimura can be a devastating submission. I respect them. So if you've got me in a Kimura, if anybody's got me in a Kimura, I know we're in the danger zone here. Not just for getting tapped, but also getting injured. So I'm really trying to be careful. And even me, Kimura is one of my favorite positions. Not so much as a direct submission, because I think people are pretty decent at defending Kimuras.
You have to set it up for sure.
You got to set it up to really, really hit a clean Kimura, but they're really nice for upgrading your positions to the back and triangles and all those other things. So it's a great position.
I just love the grip. I love the grip, and because of the control, mainly because I can play around, try to go to a different, more dominant position without having the fear of losing where I was.
For real, yeah. I think it's a great control position because it's such a good, secure position. I think that's one of the things that makes it, and really, and Brandon Mccaghren had this. Had a video on this as well. A Kimura from a triangle. So there's been several instances of this, and they're all over social media, where so if you've got the person in a triangle and the person does the little arm.
We're talking about like a leg triangle.
Yes.
From bottom.
Correct. Yeah. So just a typical triangle. And the person does the defense where they tuck the hand. Well, if you switch the triangle and you go after that Kimura on that hand, it can put a pretty devastating. I've seen at least 1 or 2 supracondylar fractures, and they're really nasty.
That's not a good place.
It's not a great place to have a fracture. So I mean, if you're in a triangle and someone snatches up a Kimura on you, just
Well, you're saying you keep the triangle, but you're additionally putting them into your Kimura, or do you go into the omoplata?
No.
So you keep it. Yeah,
you keep the triangle, and so their shoulders locked in, and they're just pushing this Kimura. There's at least 2 where you get a really nice fracture. And there's one in particular where the coach is telling his athlete not to tap. Well, he's got this Kimura in the triangle, and you just hear this. And dude, and everybody just they do the yell. So it's terrible. So I think Kimura's in the right spot there.
Why would you put your hand there? You're supposed to posture up.
What's that?
Do the shimmy. You're supposed to posture up, do the shimmy.
Now, look, man, it happens. So we'll talk later, but it's a really good play. I feel like you, Daddy Longlegs, man. I feel like that's something you'd already be doing a lot of. But
what I've seen on an instructional that I really like, in addition to the triangle game that I'm trying to use, is once you snatch up the triangle, you have to cut the angle, right? But as you're cutting the angle, you can sometimes hook the leg in case they're trying to stand up or get out of it, so you can sweep them if you need to. But you can also, instead of doing an underhook under the leg, you can underhook the arm, and then you've got a little arm bar as well on top of it.
Straight arm lock.
Yeah, straight arm lock as well as the triangle, which is fantastic control position too.
It's great. As a matter of fact, I got hit with that the other night. Shout out Miguel. That's exactly how I got tapped the other night after rolling with Miguel. So my buddy, screw you, Miguel. All right, so. And then second to last, 2 and 3, we've got the heel hook family.
So 3, what's
outside heel hook? 2 is inside heel hook.
Got it. I think they're equally. I mean, you might as well interchangeably.
Yeah, they're both tough.
But I saw where he was. Still, man, I don't know. But the heel inside heel hook looked like it had a little bit more torsion on the knee than the outside heel hook. So I guess maybe that's why I'm looking at it that way.
I will tell you why I think the inside heel hook is more devastating.
Go for it.
At least I think. I think one of the reasons why the outside heel hook doesn't get quite as much respect is that the ankle can invert and absorb some of the torsion from the outside. At least that's my belief. Because whenever I lose or whenever I feel like I'm not able to get as much And granted, a lot of it's by finishing mechanics too, because I've seen really, really good instructionals on detailing, on being really specific about how you finish that outside heel hook. You got to be really picky about how you finish that, versus the inside heel hook, where you still need to be picky, but you've got a pretty long non-compliant lever on the medial ankle right there. So when you apply that inside heel hook, the deltoid ligament, and all those the medial ligaments of the ankle, they're not going anywhere. So it goes straight up to the knee. And I think that's where you get the tap. And the outside heel hook, I think you're absorbing a lot of that torsion across the lateral ankle ligaments. So maybe it's just like, maybe just slightly less devastating.
So you're talking about the biomechanics there? Like the calcaneal E version is limited compared to the in version of that calcaneus. So you have more freedom, bit more slack before you're hitting it.
Yeah. So I think if you don't have, now if you've got really good mechanics, like like Craig Jones or Rob Diggle, or I mean, he's got a couple names, but he's really, really good leg lockers. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Good technique, they're just going to break your shit. But I think in somebody like me, where my mechanics maybe aren't as clean as they could be, I think an inside heel hook is a better bet for me applying a submission. So so that's just that might be something to think about there. And number one was the twister. The twister.
I have not used it much, which we talked about that. So
we're gonna talk after this. After we film this, we're gonna talk a little bit about the twister with Patrick.
It's always hard to find a number one spot on a list like this.
Something's got to be number one
in the world of submissions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like, isn't there one other one? And if you guys want to, you can leave a comment in the section below the video and see if you've got a better number one, because I feel like there's got to be a better number one. But you're saying it's pretty devastating. Let's hear it, man.
Well, I really, one of my favorite things about that is that, of course, Brandon Mccaghren, he's a coach in the 10th Planet system. The twister is kind of a notorious submission within our system. I think in other systems, like if you talk to Danaher and that crew, they refer to it as is it a wrestler's guillotine or something along those lines. They have another word for it. Of course, in jiu-jitsu, everybody's got a word for something. Especially
you guys.
Yeah, especially at 10th Planet guys. So I really like that Brandon put that in there. And I will say that it locks the spine down completely. I mean, it is one of the most immobile. If you've got a really good in stage position for the twister, where you're right at that point where you're about to catch the grip over the top of the head. Yeah, I mean, there's extension, lateral flexion, rotation, and you are at the end of your range on all of those things. And then you just apply that last little bit. I think it's funny though. I've never seen anybody get injured with a twister, mainly because, it's almost embarrassing not embarrassing to get caught in it, but it's just like, okay, if a 10th Planet guy gets you in the twister, everybody's getting all excited. Oh, he's going to get a twister, because believe it or not, like if I were to hit a twister in competition, I think my coach would probably buy me a steak. I really do. I think you think, Patrick, do you think Lonnie would buy me a steak? Lonnie would buy me a steak if I hit somebody with a twister in competition. So it's just kind of like a matter of pride. So, but I tap pretty quickly to those things too.
What's the difficulty level of putting that on?
I mean, there's a setup. I mean, there's a pretty, but I wouldn't say it's any more complicated than setting up a clean triangle or an omoplata or any of those things. There's a setup for all these things, and especially for someone who's not familiar with the position. So in our gym, we kind of have a feeling for when we're starting to get set up for the twister, and so we know to weasel our way out of it. And so defending these things early is a little easier in our gym.
I'm going to put that out here right now. When I go to train with you guys at 10th Planet,
open bounty on a twister.
I will now look at so many twister with videos, setups, and everything. I will guarantee this.
Shout out 10th Planet.
Nobody's going to catch me in a twister.
Anybody hits him in a twister, anybody hits Patrick in a twister at the gym, I'm buying you dinner. What's it? Waffle House. A waffle dinner.
Dude,
fine dining experience.
It's not going to happen. And the best you can do is Waffle House. Come on.
Dude, for real, man. But yeah, the Twister's legit. I just, I'm not sure about the most dangerous though.
Let's just wait. I'm going to put this into a little quotation note at the bottom here, because this is just applying to your 10th Planet Gym, not to the crazy ones out in Austin or wherever. The deal is off at that point.
Oh yeah, yeah. If somebody at Tempe, Austin hits him with a Twister, it's just like, no, it's no deal. It's got to be at New Caney. Yeah. I would prefer video. Okay,
there's got to be evidence, right?
We got to have evidence. Okay, so anyway, that's just.
I will put myself in a Kimura before I let somebody get me in a Twister.
Dude, the Twister's legit, man. It's fun. But anyway, that's just kind of an interesting breakdown. I would say maybe the Twister would not be on this list. I think its potential for harm is high, but its frequency of, like, how often it's actually applied in a gym or competition setting relative to the heel hooks, the Kimuras, all these other things, it's pretty low.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think on a frequency basis, like I don't know that you can put it on the list, because there's so many other ones that you should be putting on the list that are hit really frequently, because all of those are hit like all the time.
Yeah, all these, yeah,
all of them.
Yeah, for real.
So
but the Twister just kind of stands out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a little publicity stunt there, maybe.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's there's a 10th Planet shill going on there, possibly. But at the same time, it agrees with my biases as well, because I'm 10P for life. But that's just how we do. So, are there any submissions that weren't on this list that would be on your list?
Yep.
Which one?
Number one.
Whoa.
I'll put the bow and arrow choke on number one instead of the Twister.
For the gi.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the potential for injury, school me on this, because
so you got to. Okay, let me talk you through this.
I mean, I know what a bow and arrow choke is. I got bow and arrow choked a lot, but
here's why I'm saying this. Number one, you're grabbing the lapel of the gi. Okay. So now this is a material. This is not a giving material. This is unforgiving. This is not going to stretch any. It's nothing. Like your grips, you might get a little wiggle here because you get soft tissue in your forearms and whatever. Once you get that gi lapel across the throat, if you get it, then that's really tight. Now what you'll do is you are moving your body away as you're cinching in this lapel, okay? This is going deeper into your neck. Number one, now we've got carotids involved. Yep. As it's cinching in deeper, now you're having some cervical rotation. Your head is turning over to the side. Now you've got closing of that spine, okay? Now the fun part starts.
I'm getting some PTSD as you're talking about this. My early days training the gi, I got bow and arrow choke, man. This thing sucks.
It is awful. And then now it's not even tight right now. It's tight. You know what I'm saying? It's freaking tight. It's not even tight right now on the applying side. Yeah. I'm going to get the pan grip or I'm going to hook the leg. Now I'm going to tighten up more and more rotation. Now you get thoracic rotation into it. You're taking up all that space. There's no more give. That lapel is so tight over your throat. It just, at this point, you can tap, right? But now we've still got that hip extension. We've still got that hip extension into your body as you're applying the pull on the leg, as you're applying the pull on the lapel. Now you're applying this amount of force of your body weight into someone's neck and throat, and then you finish, and that's it.
All right. So for real, I can't disagree with you on this. I can't disagree with you. I think there's a lot of torque. I think there's so many layers to getting choked out and getting a force applied to your spine. It's just miserable. I've experienced it. I've experienced a really good bow and arrow choke, and I've been twistered before, and they both are just awful experiences.
I bet.
They're both terrible experiences, but just one happens to be in the gi, the other's no gi. So, but yeah, man, yeah, that's a good. I would say that should definitely be on the list. Is there any others?
I mean, that's just the one that pops into my head. I mean, otherwise I'm happy with the list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a good list. So shout out Brandon Mccaghren for putting that that list together. And
he did a really good job. I love the way he did it with a surgeon and stuff like that. Really legit, and not just any surgeon who's like from the outside. This is all looking dangerous, etc. There's actually a guy who seemed like he knew what he was doing. So I really appreciated that like viewpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and for real, having the orthopedist there that had a background in training, that makes all the difference in the world, because most orthopedists are going to look at it. Well, that looks really dangerous. You know, it's like
same as with PT, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. PT is the same way. I mean, if you're working with a PT who's not familiar, at least on a superficial level, of what we're doing on the mats, it's really, really tough to, you know, I'm not saying every physical therapist should have a background in jiu-jitsu to treat a jiu-jitsu athlete. That's not the case, but to really, you know, have a sense of how to get you back on the mat and what you have to go through, it's helpful to have some experience in the sport. And that's one of the reasons why we put this Physioplata together. Physioplata. Still love the name, man.
Yeah, dude. Omoplata.
Physios.
Which is a Kimura.
Yeah.
There's an underlying message.
Yeah, man. There's a lot to it. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Well, good time talking to Patrick, as usual, about some of the more prevalent and most risky submissions. If you have a submission that you think should have been on the list that didn't make the list, let us know in the comments, if you don't mind. We'd love to hear from you.
Give us a gi and give us a no gi.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do it no gi, and then also what do you call it? The gi submission as well. Love to hear. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, we'll catch you next time on Physioplata.
Later.